The woman was quiet by nature, patient and calm. The kind of person people ignored because she did not argue or complain, and many thought her silence meant weakness. Her husband was the opposite. He feared poverty deeply and chased respect and status with all his heart, ashamed of where he came from and desperate to be seen as important. In the beginning, their marriage was built on love and trust, not comfort, and they struggled together with hope. When his work became difficult, she supported him emotionally and financially, never asking for credit, always standing behind him so he could move forward. As success came, his heart changed. Gratitude turned into pride, and love slowly faded from his voice. He began to believe his rise was his alone, forgetting the hands that lifted him. When he finally divorced her, he did it openly and coldly, humiliating her in front of others, and society quickly took his side because he had money and status. She walked away without fighting, holding on to her dignity, while he stood proud, unaware that silence was not her weakness. It was her strength waiting for the right time. People spoke about her as if her story had ended. She is finished. They said she lost everything. Others whispered. When she passed, eyes followed her with quiet judgment, but she did not answer them. She did not explain herself. She walked with her head steady, carrying silence like a shield. A distant aunt once asked, "Why don't you tell them the truth?" She replied softly, "A seed does not shout while growing." Inside her silence lived strength, deep and patient, waiting for its season. Only a few elders knew what the crowd did not. Only old men with white beards and careful eyes had seen the papers. They had warned her gently, "Pow spoken too early becomes dust." She owned more than people could imagine, yet she lived as if she owned nothing. Her name rested quietly in legal pages, holding weight no noise could carry. "Be patient," an elder told her. "Time is the friend of the wrongdone." She listened, because she knew wisdom moves slowly, but never gets lost. Her power slept, not wasted, not forgotten. She chose her silence with care, not because she was afraid, but because she understood timing. Justice, like rain, does not fall when shouted at, it falls when the sky decides. She waited, knowing truth grows heavier with time, and while she waited, the man rose fast. When he entered his hands, and humility left his heart, his clothes changed, his words changed, the way he looked at people changed. "I worked hard for this life," he told anyone who would listen. "No one gave me anything." Praise fed him, attention fed him. Respect, once shared, now demanded. He began to forget the past that shaped him. He spoke harshly about people he once stood beside. He laughed at stories that reminded him of hunger. New money taught him a new language, one without gratitude. Soon, he learned to bow only to power. He surrounded himself with people who looked important and spoke loudly. Among them, he felt safe. Among them, he felt big. "Stay close to those who matter," a friend told him. "I am one of them now," he replied with pride. Deep inside, fear still lived, the fear of ever being small again. And while he climbed higher, believing he had won, she remained quiet, steady, and unseen. The path to justice had already begun to open, slowly, silently, waiting for the moment truth would rise on its own. He spoke of women as if they were shadows of the earth, unworthy and small. "Those who live in poverty will always remain nothing," he said to his friends, a sharp smile on his face. "Ex-wives, useless," he laughed, raising his glass. The words were not kind. They carried shame, sharp as a spear, turning memories of love into cruelty. Those who remembered him as humble before now shook their heads. Some whispered, "Power has poisoned him." Even those who once admired him felt the weight of his pride pressing against the room. She lived quietly, refusing to meet the world's loud standards. Her home was modest, yet she lacked nothing. She did not flaunt her wealth. She did not speak of her accomplishments. When asked why she lived simply, she only said, "True strength does not need applause." She moved through life with calm dignity, untouched by the judgment that followed her like a stubborn shadow. Her modesty was her armor, her quiet, her power. Whispers found her everywhere. Did she lose everything? The neighbors murmured. Surely she must be desperate, some said. Children of the town would repeat the tales of her supposed misfortune, and strangers assumed she was abandoned. No one asked her truth. No one sought to know the power that slept quietly in her hands. The world judged without seeing, but she held her silence as if it were gold, knowing what others could not yet understand. Even her family, anxious and worried, pressed her. "Why do you not reveal yourself?" a cousin demanded. "Show them who you are. Do not let them lie about you." Her mother sighed. "Child, they do not see your strength, but one day they will." She smiled softly. "It is not time. Let patience be my voice." They feared for her. They cared for her, but she chose silence. knowing that words spoken too soon can undo even the strongest of truths. The elders spoke when they saw the young man's arrogance and the woman's restraint. Fortune without humility is like a river that will flood and destroy. An elder warned. Patience is the drum that beats before the storm of justice. Another said. They reminded the people that pride blinds even the cleverest, and that the spirits of ancestors watch those who forget the lessons of the past. The woman listened quietly, absorbing the wisdom of the old, letting it guide her without haste or show. Yet, the world could not understand her calm. They grew restless with her silence. Why does she not defend herself? They asked. Is she truly nothing? Their impatience filled the air, but she did not answer. Silence was her strategy, and it moved slowly, like the river carving valleys over centuries. What others mistook for weakness was, in truth, destiny quietly arranging the scales of justice. The company had grown larger than anyone could imagine. Its decisions reached far, touching thousands of lives. Yet none knew who truly held its power. The board made choices. The city whispered praises. The elites celebrated victories. But the hands that guided it remained unseen. Even those who thought they were in charge bowed unknowingly to the quiet force behind the scenes. She had built it all, yet no one could point a finger at her. Her strength was hidden, wrapped in patience and law, unseen by the greedy eyes that measured power, by noise and flash. The night came when the city itself seemed to pause. A grand gala was announced, a festival of wealth, achievement, and applause. The air buzzed with ego, laughter, and expectation. The stage was set for triumph, for pride, for display. Everyone believed they knew the story, and everyone believed they would see success on their own terms. But fate has a way of arriving quietly, with the weight of justice behind it. She entered without hurry, without Her dress spoke of dignity, not extravagance. Her steps were measured, her gaze calm. The crowd noticed her, and yet she did not demand their attention. She carried no pride, no fear, only presence. Eyes that had mocked, judged, and whispered, now turned toward her, uncertain, curious. Some felt unease. Some felt admiration, though none could name why. Whispers became laughter, cruel and sharp. Surely she comes to beg, someone said. Does she not know her place? Another asked. Social cruelty spilled over like a river. Respect had always been tied to appearance, to noise, to wealth, flaunted. Yet she neither argued nor bowed. Her silence spoke louder than any words. She reminded the room, without effort, that dignity is not borrowed from applause. Then he saw Herod, the man who had once mocked, abandoned, and humiliated her. Rage shot through him like a spear. His hands trembled. His face darkened with shock. Old hatred rose. Memories of love, lost, betrayal, and every insult returned to burn him from within. Pride refused him peace. He could not bear to see her there, quiet, strong, untouchable in her calm. The crowd noticed, but they did not yet understand the storm that had begun. Words came from his mouth like stones thrown in anger. You worthless woman. He spat, forgetting all grace. You have no right here. You are nothing. Each word cut, each insult flung into the crowd like firebrands. The audience gasped. Some laughed, some looked away. It was the final betrayal of decency, a public act meant to humiliate, yet it only revealed the emptiness within him. She did not move, did not speak, did not flinch. Her silence was a shield and a sword, waiting for its moment. And in that silence, the truth began to stir. He could not hold himself. Rage rose too high, pride too sharp. And then it happened. Spit crossed from his mouth to her, a line of contempt that carried more than words. It was not just a gesture. Was an insult that traveled through generations, a spiritual rejection. In the eyes of those who knew, look at her. Nothing but dust under my feet, he shouted. But elders in the room felt the weight of what had been done. The air shifted, heavy and silent, as though ancestors themselves had inhaled and frowned. Some could not meet her eyes, for they knew the line had been crossed that no human hand could fix. The elders whispered among themselves, barely audible, sensing the curse that had been invited. This is no ordinary anger, one muttered. The spirits are watching. This pride will meet its reckoning. They leaned forward slightly, feeling the drumbeat of fate begin beneath the crowd, quiet but steady. Time itself seemed to pause, awaiting the justice that would not be delayed. He stood tall, chest out, head high. Victory danced in his mind, and he saw the room as conquered. Silence reigned around him, but it was not peace, it was the quiet before the storm. The drumbeat of justice, long ignored, began to approach, slow and inevitable. He did not see it. He could not see the ground beginning to open beneath the weight of his arrogance. The gala continued, unaware that its celebration was a stage set for the undoing of pride. Laughter, music, and applause filled the air. yet each note echoed against the walls of coming truth. Pride filled every corner, every smile, every toast. And yet, beneath the surface, the world was holding its breath. Waiting for the scales to tip, the board of the company stood in sudden stillness. Conversations hushed. Glasses paused. Mid-dur. Tension spread like a shadow over every attendee. Waited, knowing something was about to be revealed that would change everything. Even the most confident smiled nervously, unsure of what was coming. Then the name was spoken. A single voice carried it across the room, heavy and sharp. The majority shareholder, the one who held true power, was revealed. The words fell like a stone into water. Shock rippled instantly. Eyes widened. Smiles froze. Some murmured. Some could not speak. The air was electric with disbelief. The truth, long hidden, had arrived, and no pride, no arrogance, no insult could contain it. Whispers rippled through the room. Confusion filled the air like smoke. "Is it true?" someone asked, their voice trembling. "I thought she had nothing." Another whispered. The crowd looked around, seeking answers, trying to untangle the truth from the lies they had believed for so long. Their laughter, their mockery, their assumptions, all froze in place. Heavy murmurs replaced chatter, and eyes darted nervously. The story they thought they knew was gone, replaced by a reality that felt impossible to grasp. He understood it before anyone else. A chill ran down his spine, and pride evaporated from his chest. Breath left his body as if the room itself had sucked it away. She, he whispered, words failing him. Fear, sharp and unrelenting, replaced arrogance. He could see it all now, the truth, the betrayal he thought had been his victory, staring him in the face. Memories assaulted him without mercy. The divorce replayed like a bitter drumbeat in his mind. The words he had thrown, the shame he had caused, the spit he had sent across her face, they all returned, sharper than swords. Every insult, every cruel laugh he had uttered now struck him in full measure. The life he had mocked, the woman he had abandoned, none of it was lost, none of it forgotten. And now, the weight of his actions pressed down, unyielding and inescapable. She stood where victims never stand, calm/composed, unwavering. The truth had placed her above those who only stumble in sorrow. Her strengths required no display, no cries, no anger. She simply stood, dignified, and the power within her filled the room. The crowd could see it, even if they could not name it. She was the pillar, the quiet force that had always been present, but invisible too. Eyes blinded by pride, Bauer shifted without a single word. The room felt it, deep in its bones. Authority passed from the man who had once mocked her to the woman who had carried the weight silently. Every gesture, every gaze, every subtle movement acknowledged the change. Silence became louder than applause, heavier than any speech, more binding than any contract. It was a quiet revolution, and all of the city's elite felt its weight. He fell where he once stood tall. The facade of success crumbled, revealing emptiness beneath. His control slipped like sand through fingers. Faces that had once bowed to him now looked away, unsure, uncomfortable, witnessing the unraveling of pride. Public shame wrapped around him, unrelenting and merciless. He realized too late that no wealth, no status, no loud victory could protect him from the justice that had been waiting, patient and silent, all along. The elders felt it immediately. Their eyes narrowed, voices dropping to whispers only the wise could hear. "This is no accident," one murmured. "The hand of ancestors moves," another said. They had spoken of patience and humility for years, warning that pride would invite judgment. Now, their words were proven true. Justice, long patient, had arrived not through human laws, but through the rhythm of fate itself. The elders nodded to one another, silent guardians, witnessing the balance of power restored. They did not need explanation. They had read the moment as clearly as the sun rising over the hills. The music faltered, laughter stilled. The celebration that had promised applause and pride turned heavy with unease. Eyes that had shone with joy now darted nervously. Some whispered, others stared in disbelief. The truth, once hidden behind silence and patience, now stood tall in the center of the room. No one could ignore it. The Gala, meant to glorify success, had become a stage for judgment, and all who had watched her before with mockery felt the weight of their assumptions. Faces that had mocked, sneered, and whispered found themselves searching for mercy. "Perhaps we were wrong," someone muttered, cheeks flushed. "Maybe we should have listened," another said. Social hierarchies and false respect crumbled like dry clay. Those who had prized wealth over wisdom now trembled, realizing that honor cannot be bought, and arrogance is never safe. Respect shifted quietly, like a river changing course, flowing toward the one who had always held true power. The hypocrisy of class was exposed, and everyone could see it. She stood quietly, her dignity shining brighter than any jewel. No one could look down on her again. Her silence, her patience, her unwavering calm had been rewarded. Strength required. No shouting, no display. It lived in her presence, undeniable and unshakable. Even the loudest voices of society bowed, at least in their hearts, to the woman who had been underestimated. He had lost more than a marriage. The pride he had built, like walls around himself, now crumbled. Honor, self-respect, and the admiration he had once thought unshakable all were gone. His wealth, which had seemed limitless, felt hollow in his hands. No money, no status, no title could repair the shame he had invited upon himself. All that remained was the bitter taste of realization. In regret, he stood rich, yet spiritually bankrupt. The deepest truth struck him. Success without character is emptiness. Power without humility is like a tree with no roots, strong in appearance, weak in spirit. All his achievements now seemed small compared to the moral collapse he faced. In the silence of the room, where justice had spoken without a word, he understood, at last, the cost of arrogance. And she, who had waited quietly all this time, remained whole, dignified, and untouchable. The room had seen everything. It had borne witness to arrogance and pride, to mockery and scorn. And now, it held the stillness of justice fulfilled. One could escape the truth that now rested like a heavy stone on every shoulder. Every eye that had laughed now lowered. Every voice that had spoken against her now hushed. Justice had completed its circle, quietly but completely. She stood at the center, calm, unshaken, and undeniable. The air felt dense with the weight of what had been balanced, as if the ancestors themselves had nodded, satisfied. Even those who had assumed themselves untouchable felt the gravity pressing down. Inescapable. The morning after brought silence where applause had once rung. The grand hall of celebration, filled with music and laughter, hours before, now echoed with uneasy murmurs. Faces that had been bright with pride now showed shame, eyes reflecting the reality they could no longer deny. The revelry had been replaced. With quiet reflection, people shuffled, whispered, and avoided eye contact, as if the truth had burned away the joy they had once felt. Even the elite, accustomed to controlling appearances, understood that some lessons could not be avoided. He stood alone, his title meaningless in the light of reality. Professional consequences began to unfold immediately. Contracts reconsidered, boards whispering, colleagues avoiding him. Reputation, once a fortress, crumbled before the public eye. Respect is earned, one voice murmured, not bought, with money or status. The truth cut deeper than any loss of fortune could, and he felt it fully. A man can hold power, yet still be empty. She spoke only when needed, and the board leaned in. Her voice was calm, steady, but carried the weight of experience and wisdom. Power, she said softly, is not measured by wealth, but by the justice you leave behind. I will not seek revenge, but I will ensure balance is restored. Her words were simple, yet every ear in the room understood their depth. Strength required no shouting. Purpose alone gave it force. The elders listened with quiet satisfaction. Their eyes, weathered by years of observing human folly, noted her restraint. They did not seek anger, nor did they celebrate punishment. They listened for justice, for the voice of fairness guided by wisdom. Balance had been restored, pride humbled, dignity honored, and the room, full of the city's most ambitious, finally understood that power guided by morality was the true legacy. She looked at him, not with anger, but with the quiet certainty of someone who had seen life in its harshest form and had chosen a different path. I will not destroy you, she said, her voice soft but unwavering. Justice does not require cruelty. Let your conscience carry the weight of your choices. The room felt a hush settle over it, as if the ancestors themselves were listening. Her decision not to humiliate him revealed a power far greater than any wealth or title, the authority of mercy. Whispers spread. This was strength, dressed in calm, patience guiding power, wisdom eclipsing pride. The society around her began to learn. Her authority was not enforced by fear, but by fairness. Every decision she made, every word she spoke, it became a lesson for those who had sought to measure power by dominance alone. The elders nodded approvingly. They had taught that true strength heals, it does not humiliate. From her example, the people saw that leadership could nurture rather than crush. An elder stepped forward, voice steady and filled with the weight of generations. Remember this, he said. Pride always carries a cost. Silence, patience, and humility are gifts rewarded by fate. Those who scorn the quiet will one day stumble into ruin. The crowd absorbed the lesson, their laughter and arrogance replaced by thoughtful heads and bowed shoulders. The wisdom of ancestors had spoken through the calm of one woman, guiding hearts more than hands could. She rose not to rule, but to protect. Her transformation was subtle, yet profound, Responsibility replaced dominance. And respect was earned naturally, not demanded. The strength of a guardian lies not in conquest, she told the council, but in ensuring balance and safety for those who follow. People saw her power differently now. It was not loud, it did not terrify, but it steadied the world around her, and they admired her quietly. The man, left alone in his wealth and title, felt the emptiness settle around him. He had learned the lesson the hard way. Loss is the greatest teacher. No money, no position could undo the truth he had ignored. Each day would remind him of pride's cost, and each night would bring reflection upon the choices he had made. Growth came slowly, forged through pain, regret, and the humbling weight of truth. Society, once eager to judge her, now understood that silence could carry power. What they had mistaken for weakness was strength tempered by wisdom. Her quiet patience had changed their perception, proving that restraint and dignity are the ultimate weapons against injustice. In her calm, measured actions, truth was honored, mercy celebrated, and the moral of the tale became clear. Those who wait with patience and act with wisdom will always stand taller than those who strike first in anger. Long after the hall emptied, and the echoes of whispers faded, the elders gathered. Their voices, deep with age and knowledge, carried the weight of centuries. "Children," one said, "remember this story. Remember the woman who spoke little, yet taught the greatest lessons. Let her patience and wisdom guide your steps. For what is done in pride will always return to teach you humility." The young listened, eyes wide, hearts stirring, knowing that this tale would live in their mouths for generations to come. The roots of the land seemed to listen as well. They remembered every insult, every act of arrogance, and every quiet strength. Betrayal, once thought buried, returned full circle. The man who had scorned and humiliated learned in the deepest way that no pride can outrun the law of destiny. The village murmured, "The earth holds memory. Even when men forget, justice finds its path." True power revealed itself not in loud proclamations, nor in titles or gold. It came through character, through restraint, through deeds measured by fairness rather than fear. The woman's leadership required no show. Her calm, unshaken, allowed her strength to shape the community without pomp. And in that silence, the balance of the world was restored. The lesson was clear. Not written in books, not spoken in hurried words, but in the consequences that could not be ignored. Arrogance had been punished, humility honored. The people knew that wisdom stood taller than wealth, that silence guided more surely than noise, and that destiny would always reward those who listened to the voice of patience and justice. The story, now living in memory, would be told wherever the sun rose, a beacon for those who would come after.